Hey guys, welcome back to another video. It has been 1 week since the release of RuneScape 3 on Steam, so in this video I want to talk about some of the impacts Steam has had on RuneScape so far, and I also want to talk about some of the long-term impacts as well. And I also want to give a few of my suggestions as to some things that Jagex could possibly do to make a bigger impact, especially on the free-to-play player base, since a lot of new players are coming to the game because of Steam. So anyway, we're going to jump right into today's video. As you all know, RuneScape has been released on Steam on October 14th, so it has been 1 week since it has been released on Steam. And I'm going to look at this past week and basically compare it to the previous weeks and look at the player count, because obviously with RuneScape being available on Steam and promoted pretty heavily on Steam, we're obviously going to see a lot of new players and even returning players coming to the game and giving RuneScape 3 another try, and we have definitely seen this in the player count. So taking a look at this graph that I did make based on the information of the player count over basically the past month, you can see that October 14th, there has been a pretty big increase in the player count. So this is basically the average player count per day. So obviously it will go higher than this and it'll also go a bit lower. But you can see that after October 14th, we have seen a pretty significant increase in the player count. It's approximately a 20% increase in players, which is a really great sign. And even if you hop into a free-to-play world, the increase in player count will be pretty obvious. As you can see in free-to-play worlds, there are a ton of people right now. There's even some more experienced players helping out the newer players, which is an excellent thing to see. But basically, there just is a ton of new players playing the game, which honestly is amazing. And that is most likely the cause of the significant increase in the player count. Also, looking at the 7-day averages for the past 5 weeks, you can see that October 14th to the 21st, which is all in the span of RuneScape 3 being released on Steam, it has increased by quite a bit. We're up to about 35,000 players active on average, which is about a 6,000 increase from the past 5 months. This is a really solid increase, and hopefully it does continue to grow. As we saw, it does seem to be growing a little bit more each day. However, it will be interesting to see if this does sort of fizzle out, but I do have some suggestions that I will be going over later, which will hopefully help keep the players playing the game and make sure that the player count doesn't go back to where it was. Another thing that I wanted to compare is the difference between the player count increase from archaeology and then compare it to now, where the player count is increasing because of Steam. Now, as you can see, at the beginning of April 2020, there was a pretty massive increase in the player count in the yellow graph, which is RuneScape 3's player count, and we reached a peak of about 47,000 players active on average, which was an all-time high for many years prior, which is really impressive. Now, as we saw right now, we are at about 35,000 players active on average, and this is really good. It's a lot higher than it has been for the past 4 or 5 months, but hopefully it doesn't decrease a lot like the archaeology increase has. And I think there are a few ways Jagex could try and keep the newer players playing the game and enjoying it. Now, the early game in RuneScape 3, it can be really enjoyable because there is so much to do, but all these things that you have to do also makes it pretty overwhelming. And for that reason, I do think a proper tutorial for newer players is basically needed to help out these newer players and actually give them a shot to understand the game, and it will definitely help them enjoy the game a lot more and make a higher chance for them to actually stay and play the game. There were so many posts on Reddit of newer players asking questions, even posts of newer players asking questions in-game, and then more experienced players were helping them out. RuneScape is really confusing, especially to newer players, so for that reason, it's really helpful for us as a community if we are able to help them out and answer those questions, because this will obviously help out those newer players and make them want to stay and keep on playing the game. Another idea that I really like and I do think is an excellent idea, is having a free weekend. And this actually was a thing in RuneScape 3 back in 2017. There was a open weekend or free weekend where you got 3 days to play RuneScape, play members RuneScape for free. And I think this would be an excellent idea, especially with all of the newer players playing the game now. I think if we were to advertise that and have that as a thing, maybe in a few months, then all the newer players now might want to try that out, and it might actually allow them to see the members content and how fun RuneScape can actually be. Now, of course, there may be some implications of this. You might have to be a bit wary of some exploitations of this, but since it is only 3 days, it shouldn't really be too much of a problem. Also, in the past, the free weekends didn't take off the 25,000 coin trade limit, so that should obviously help a little bit as well. But overall, I do think a free weekend is an excellent idea. Free weekends is actually a recurring thing in Rainbow Six Siege, which is a really popular first-person shooter game. It is one of the most popular games on Steam, and whenever the free weekends come, there is a surge in the player count, and it does maintain for a while. So for that reason, I do think a free weekend would be an excellent idea in RuneScape 3. It will not only give the newer players a chance at checking out membership and seeing what RuneScape actually has to offer and all of the member content to it. And it should help them out deciding whether they want to play this game long term or not. RuneScape can be a ton of fun, and there's so much content locked behind member, and member can be difficult to obtain as a free-to-play player. So I really think giving them a weekend to try out the game fully is an excellent idea. A free weekend would also be an excellent idea because it will save new players having to buy bonds if they're not willing to spend real money to buy membership. And that leads me to another sort of impact that has happened with the release of Steam. I was looking into the economy of RuneScape 3 and seeing if the introduction of RuneScape on Steam had an impact on it at all, and I did notice that bonds have been increasing quite a bit ever since the release of Steam. Now, this might not be because of Steam, it could also be because of many other factors. Usually around December is when the Premier Club is announced and you can buy that with bonds, so that is a possibility as to why bonds are increasing. And then, of course, there is Double XP Weekend, which is going to be happening in the beginning and middle of November. So that could also be another factor to the increase of bonds. Overall, RuneScape being introduced to Steam hasn't really had too much of an impact on the economy. It seems to have mostly just affected the player base, which obviously is an excellent thing. Now, other than some basic tutorials to help out newer players learn about RuneScape 3 and how to play it, and then also, of course, the free weekend idea, I do think another great idea to help newer players continue enjoying RuneScape 3, especially at a lower level, is to expand on the free-to-play content. So currently you are able to reach level 5 on each member skill except Archaeology, where you're able to reach level 20. I do think expanding all member skills up to maybe level 20 would be a good idea. That way, again, it would give newer players a taste of some more member skills. Also, maybe making some older content free to play would be a good idea as well. There's just so much content in RuneScape 3 and so much dead content as that is member content that you could make free to play content, and that will sort of bring a little bit of life back to it. I do think something like giving free to play players an extra tier of armor, just a better tier, would be pretty helpful, and maybe giving them some higher level creatures to fight would be a good idea as well. This would obviously help with newer players trying out bossing, where they can fight the giant mole and KBD, and I do think that would be a good idea, is to give them a little bit better armor just so they can have an experience bossing and getting that random or rare drop. Because that is honestly one of the most things of RuneScape 3 is having that chance to get a rare drop, that adrenaline rush every time you get a boss kill or even complete a clue scroll. If they could have just something with that in free-to-play, just so newer players can feel that and see that aspect of the game, I do think that would be an excellent idea. And so anyway guys, that is it for this video. Basically, there has only been one major impact to Steam introducing RuneScape 3, and that has been the player count. It has increased by about 20%, and hopefully that does continue to happen. Maybe if they do implement some of the things that I have mentioned in this video, that would help. If you guys have any other ideas of things that they could change and help newer players enjoy the game and stick with it, let me know in the comments down below. Anyway guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.